This is good.
Talk to them.
This is good. Going backwards just a little bit, looking at last week, from a program standpoint, it's disappointing not to win a game, but at the same time I was encouraged because I felt like there was some growth as far as what we want, the level, the expectation level, what it's going to take. I thought there were a lot of positive things in this football game. When you look at it, especially in a kicking game, when I felt like they were as explosive as they were, I certainly didn't like the first kickoff return that went for 60 yards. But after that, I felt like the kicking game really did a nice job and really played well. I think outside of that initial return, I thought the game was kind of a wash by being able to block a punt and make something happen to put points on the board to erase the long kickoff return they had. But I thought on the special teams, the way these guys are kicking, with Bonani and Kloss and Brockhouse Khan, really excited about the kicking game right now and some of the improvements that we've made there this year. I think offensively there were definitely some bright spots. One thing to be really encouraged with was the offensive line, especially the way we were able to come out early in the football game and run the ball. I think some of those guys are playing well up front on the offensive line. I thought Quintarius Eatman had probably one of his best games. And I think the centers and guards, Austin Ryder, continues to get better and better inside in the middle. I think at the tight end position, you saw an awful lot of Sean Price, the freshman, who is starting to get more and more playing time and are earning more and more playing time. And I think you're going to see that continue to rise as he's going along. Evan Landy is doing some good things. Shields, Hawkins, we have a couple numbers there, but really been excited about the progress of Sean Price and what he's doing right now as a true freshman. The two smallest guys on the field, Hopkins and Mitchell, that everybody says they aren't big enough. They're just like the little engines that could, and that they show up every single day. They just work extremely hard, and they're really doing a nice job. I like the way both Mitchell and Hopkins are playing for us, the way they're catching the ball, competing, blocking, playing without the ball. They've done a nice job. We've got some flashes with Andre Davis. We just need to get more consistent with our wide receiver play. The frustrating part or the disappointing part about Saturday was when they loaded the box in the second half by putting an extra safety down inside to stop the run and went to man coverage. We weren't able to expose that. We weren't able to take advantage of that. Whether that be because of protection, because of accuracy, throws, routes, getting open, running it, catching it, breaking a tackle, we weren't able to capitalize on. Most receivers, most of the time you look at man coverage and you get excited about it because that's when you really have an opportunity to make some big plays. And we weren't able to do that. And that was the disappointing part from an offensive standpoint. I think Murray continues to run hard. B.J. Daniels continues to compete. We've got to eliminate the one or two plays a game from B.J. just mentally where we put the ball in danger. You know, it's unfortunate. We threw the one right before half, the turnover that ended up going to 3 points, and then obviously the sack later in the game on third down that went for 7. But offensively, you can't afford to spot them 10 points and then try and outscore them. It makes it very difficult to do. And I thought going to the other side of the ball, I thought the defense played a great football game. I mean, really, when you look at it, saying they gave up 20 points to a team that has been scoring 56 points a game and extremely explosive. You know, we look back and go, wow, we gave up 5 big plays for 178 yards. But that's an explosive team. That's what they do. With the speed they have, running back and athleticism, the bright spot, that means in the other 60 plays, they got about 230. I think which speaks volumes for the way that our defense was able to play and keep the ball in front. I thought we tackled pretty decently and did some good things. Luke Sager played his best game up front. Tevin Mims continues to play extremely well for us. I like what Corey Grissom is doing as he is starting to get healthier and healthier, where he's not playing so much on one leg. But I think we've seen flashes out of Giddens and Forte. Need to see a little bit more consistency at that defensive end position. We're trying to develop our depth at linebacker, and I think Barrington, Linares, and Lattimore are playing very well, and you try and start to get Whitehurst and Bullock and Clyott, and we're starting to work them in, and then all of a sudden Rashard Clyott, in the first start he's had, 6 plays into it, he comes out with a lower leg injury, and then Bullock hasn't yet been able to practice because of an injury to his knee. So I'm hopeful that he'll be back, but right now both Client and Whitehurst are 2 question marks as we go into this weekend. And then in the secondary, I thought Kayvon Webster played his best game. Kayvon Webster played extremely well. I think Mark Joyce just doesn't say much, just shows up every day and plays extremely well. Hard-nosed, tough, physical. I think those guys were real staples for us in the back end. Jenkins had some flashes, did some really good things. Baker did some good things. We've just got to get more consistent as a football team on defense so we don't give up some of those big plays. But I think when you look at it overall, you know, it's easy for a football player to look at it and go, wow, I played 65 plays and I only had really 3 really bad plays. But those 3 really bad plays, oh, enough for my next trick. I will, but outside of those 65, outside of those, sorry about that.
You could hide out somewhere?
Yeah, someplace. Outside of those 65 plays, you know, they're saying, wow, for 62 of them I played great. But those 3 or 4 plays are where you give up a 60-yard kickoff return, or where you have a missed assignment where you leave a blind side end unblocked, who sacks a quarterback, who turns in to 7 points. You force a ball late in 2 minutes. You know, it's almost like you almost want to tell everybody, okay, on this one play, everybody screw up. Everybody just screw up really bad. Let's get it all out on this one play. Everybody get it done, and then let's go play great football. But I like the way that they're competing. I like the attitude. I like the morale of this football team right now. And I know that's probably hard to believe when you're sitting here with 3 losses in a row, but I don't believe morale comes just from winning. I think it certainly does for your alumni. I think it does for your fan base. But I think morale from a football team comes from them feeling like they're getting better. Like they're getting better and they're improving and they can see hope and a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that their morale right now is really positive. They're frustrated. They want to win. But I think going out there and their work habits and the things that have become the staples of this senior class is what will carry us through some of these difficult times that we're going through right now. You get ready for Temple this week. You're going to walk into a heck of a buzzsaw. I say that. I'm sure this is a game they have been looking forward to for quite some time. This is their first game back into the Big East. When you look at a number of years ago when they were dismissed for the reason of not being competitive, I'm sure that has been a thorn in their side, that they are really excited and will be a driving force motivating this football team coming back, with this being their first Big East game back into the Big East Conference. They've had an awful lot of success the last couple of years. I think Steve Adazio has done a great job with that team as a football coach. And it'll be a great opportunity for us. You don't know our players, our coaches, our fan base, don't know much about Temple. We haven't heard a lot about the players. We don't have any past games that we can say that we can go back to as far as a rivalry type of situation. But they've only played 3 games so far this year. I'm sure they'll be fresh. I'm sure they're excited. And like I said, I'm sure there are an awful lot of them that have had this game circled for quite some time, because this is their first game back into the Big East for this season. Then when you look at them, I think their special teams, starting there, I think are extremely explosive. I think they have a great kicker. He does all 3. He kicks off, he place kicks, and he punts. He is 6th in the country right now in punting, averaging about 47 yards a punt. Does a great job, a very experienced, very talented punter. They have a return man who does everything for them. I think he's 6th in the country in punt returns, 7th in the country in all-purpose yardage. Brown, number 2, I mean, just lightning, electric, fast, and you can see why they take them and put them back on both punt returns and kickoff returns. But their special teams are very explosive. And then when you look at them on defense, they have a very young front 7. They graduated an awful lot of guys from last year. They're young in the front 7, but they're very experienced in their secondary. And that kind of is forcing them to do what they're doing, which is a lot of pressure, coming after people, bringing an extra hat down, playing a lot of man coverage. Probably we're going to see a lot of what we saw the second half of last week's game. We'll see a lot of pressure. They will put the pressure on their experience, which is in the secondary, but they are very active with their linebackers and very active with their pressure package. They won't sit still in this football game. They'll twist, they'll loop, they'll blitz, they'll stun. So we'll see an awful lot of that from their defense. And then on their offense, they run a lot of different formations. They have a dual threat quarterback that try and dress things up a lot of different ways, but he both runs it and he throws it. Running back is by committee. Wide receiver number 5 is their leading receiver. Really, again, same kind of like their returner number 2, very explosive with what he does. They're going to find a way to get him the ball. They're going to put him single, double. That's all that's part of the reasoning with all the formations. They're going to move people all over the field, but they are offensive line's very big, a lot of gap blocking schemes up front where they just kind of try and maul you and swallow you up with their big offensive line. So, like I said, it would be a great challenge for us, not only going to Temple to play for the first time, but also for our players to rebound back off last week's game and find a way to get back into the conference. I think when you look at it, there's probably every reason to have a letdown when you start talking about the great crowd that we had last week, which I'm very appreciative of. Probably should have started with that, how awesome it was to run out in Raymond James Stadium. Everybody made a big to-do that the whole stadium would be garnet and gold, and it would all be full of Seminoles, but I thought that there was a great crowd, very supportive Bulls crowd, and I think this alumni group and this fan base really showed incredible support coming out and supporting this program. But we're not going to have that environment up there. It's not going to be that type of environment. It's coming off a huge emotional game. You don't have the geographical rivalry for your fan base. Our players didn't play with any of these players. They don't know any of these players. It's a game on the road. There's a lot of reasons to have a letdown, but as we talked about for us, I mean, even though we've got 5 games into the season, we only have 1 Big East game under our belt. And truly, as we have talked about what some of our goals and objectives are this season, I think there's an awful lot of excitement to get back into the conference. You know, I said this before, I love having the opportunity to play Florida State, but I'm really excited about having the opportunity to get back into conference play because these are the games that have a residual effect. A Florida State game is a kind of one and done and it's over, where this game will have a residual effect and will have not only lasting implications going all the way towards the end of the year, but have a lot to do with conference race and bowl placement. So I'm excited about having the opportunity to get back into the conference. What questions can I answer for anybody?
Skip, want to ask about kickoff return?
Yes.
I know statistically it probably hasn't been what you wanted it to be. Lizzie was talking about, like you mentioned, that a lot of these plays, 10 of the 11 are doing their job right. Mm-hmm. Is there a key? Is there some way you can get that 11th on board more consistently? Or?
Well, I think you've got 2 options. You either have to knock them all down or you have to make one miss. I mean, those are really your only options. We have not been as consistent as I'd like to be up front. You know, it was like on the very first one, boy, it looks pretty. I mean, it's exactly the way we drew it up. You knock 2 guys down right at the point of attack. You double team 2, you feel great. We've got a true freshman out there at right tackle who whiffs, and it is exactly how you draw it up as far as the middle of the field is wide open and there's one guy that comes into it. What we've got to do is we've got to, as juniors and seniors with those young guys, they've got to make one miss and go. I mean, they got to be able to make one miss and hit it, but as a football coach, you've got to get it to where all 11 of them can make their block. But that it has been literally that close on a number of them. I mean, there's 3 big hit knockdowns on the opening kickoff return that we have that I mean, those are the ones you get excited about. You teach off of. You run the film back 100 times and say, great job here, great job there, and we're that close. I mean, all you can do is continue to stress to everybody on this team the obligation they have to hold up their end of the deal, because if there's 11 guys out there, 10 guys pick their man up and take him down the field and bury him, and one guy has a lookout block, you're in trouble. You know, I mean, that's one of those, and that's really what happened with it. We just got to keep working it, keep drilling it, and we either have to get the young men to do it the proper way, or we as coaches have got to put somebody else in there that is going to get the job done, and that's the responsibility falls on us as coaches.
Staying with special teams and returning, is Terrence Mitchell still the guy in punt return, or are you going to look to start somebody else?
You know, we've played in 5 games now. We've put the ball on the ground 3 times, which has been very uncharacteristic of Terrence. Even last year, I mean, I talked about how much better he was catching the ball all through camp, but it's like he's lost his stinger a little bit. You know, I mean, it's like he's lost his stinger and his confidence in catching punts. it all started with the wind a couple weeks ago at Ball State when we went out there, and during pregame, I bet he dropped 8 in a row, you know, and it was like, ooh. And that was when I put Evan Landy back there in that game, and just as I told him, I don't want to put him back there if he doesn't have confidence in it. And so we have tried to work it, go back to basics, you know, following the ball, go back. It's kind of like a hitter when he gets into a slump. You just got to go back to basics and the fundamental things for hitting it. It's the same thing as a punt returner and catching the ball. And so right now I'll have to evaluate that with where his confidence is as we get towards the end of the week. But there's no doubt at this point it's a little shaken. Maybe we're just going to have to keep working on it in practice to try and get that confidence back. You don't get it back just in the game. You got to get it back by going out and just working it and working it.
At the end, I want to say the last guy that went out there was Davis in the FSU game. Would he be the next option? Or?
I mean, Andre Davis is a guy that's been working back there. Evan Landy has worked back there. Kenneth Durden has worked back there. I mean, there have been a number of guys that have worked back there and gotten some work. But I felt like even through camp, it wasn't even close the way Terrence was catching the ball, you know, through camp. But at this point, I said you lose your stinger a little bit, and we got to work with him to get that back.
Talking about the secondary, you know, the success against Florida State, limiting those explosive plays, is having a healthy group of guys something that gives you an advantage?
Well, we talked earlier, it'll be nice when we can get them all out there. You know, Jenkins wasn't practicing, Joyce wasn't practicing. It was like piecemeal, and the guys that got the work all week at practice weren't the guys that we were sending out there on Saturday. So the guys that were playing for us a lot really weren't the guys getting all the work. And it was frustrating because you could never get any continuity or consistency in your secondary. So now that having Kayvon back has definitely been a help. You know, we didn't have Kayvon a week ago, where Kayvon was out and we were playing a lot of the freshmen kind of by committee. Josh Brown played that corner, Kenneth Durden played that corner, Bivens played that corner. I mean, so all of a sudden you've got 4 or 5 guys playing that corner position. Yeah, it makes it really hard. So having him back and having George Baker and the 2 of them as upperclassmen really holding that down, I thought Kayvon Webster played an outstanding football game. And then at the safety position, when John went out with the lower leg, John LeGis went out with the lower leg in that game, I think having guys like Jenkins and Joyce to still step in there and play, that gave us that consistency of 4, and I think that's a huge part of it. And when you look at all those guys, they make a big deal all the time about talking about playing with upperclassmen. When you're talking about that's 2 juniors and 2 seniors, and 2 junior safeties and 2 senior corners. Those guys that have been there, that have played a lot of football, that have a lot of experience and moxie and know-how and can handle tough situations in a football game, and I think it showed in the way that they played Saturday.
Legist okay?
What's that?
Is Legist okay?
John is like Richard and Whitehurst did not practice today. Went out and tried to go a little bit, but it's not ready. So we'll just have to, we'll play that by ear as we go. I can't rule any of them out at this point. I would say there's somewhere between doubtful and questionable, just not knowing. Probably have a little bit better idea where they are tomorrow, you know, whether or not they can go tomorrow or how much closer they are. But those 3 right now, I believe, are the only 3 that were held out of practice that weren't on the injury report from before.
Came out in the last 2 games with a real commitment to the running game, especially in the opening drive. Is your aim to keep that going deeper into games, and just talk about the progress of the running game the last few weeks?
Well, it's definitely better than it was at the beginning of the year. I mean, at the beginning of the year, we were trying to play musical chairs up front. We didn't have our starting 2 tackles for the opening football game because of some injuries. Then we got those guys back, and then Darrell Williams got hurt, and I mean, so we had to move Mark Popek out. And I mean, it's been kind of that consistency we talked about in the secondary. We haven't really been able to develop any type of continuity up front on the offensive line. But in the last couple of weeks, I really think they've done a nice job. It's a proud group, and I thought they came out determined. Somebody had given me the stat that only 2 teams had rushed for over 100 yards against Florida State in the last 2 years. I don't know if there's any truth to that statistic, but it sounded really good since it would have made us the 3rd one. I like the way it sounded. But you know, when we came in and we knew they were fast, we knew they were physical, and we talked about that before, how they were kind of a combination of the 2. But we were going to try and give our players an opportunity to compete. We weren't going to run away from it. You can't run away from their speed. So we were going to give them an opportunity to come off the ball up inside and run the ball up inside. Probably in hindsight, we should have thrown a little bit more play action pass, because they then loaded the box in the second half and played man and took away our running game by outnumbering us, and then we were not able to capitalize on the throwing game. So yeah, I would have liked to seen it go a little bit deeper into the game, but at the same time, we've got to be able to get people off our back with our passing game and create some big plays when people go to man-to-man coverage.
You're much better equipped now to run the ball than you were a month ago. So
I think we're more equipped to today, yeah, and having a healthy Shaw's back now. Lindsey Lamar is getting more and more comfortable at the running back position, and I really like the way Demetrius Murray is competing and play in and play out. What he's doing, not just with the ball under his arm, but the way he's playing without the ball, he's making some huge plays that if you really study the film, you know, the long run BJ made in the first third down the sideline, he's got a huge block there that springs it on the one holding call that was brought back. He makes a huge block that springs it into the second level. I mean, he's really doing some great things without the football right now.
With Marcus Shaw, I know he played sparingly against FSU. How close is he to being back to full go, 100%?
I think he's not. I wouldn't say he's 100% yet. He's good enough to play, but I would say you still see him hobble a little bit. I would say he's probably at about 85, 90% right now. He's good, but it's still there enough. I don't know necessarily that it's a pain thing as much as it's a tightness thing. You know what I mean? He's not in pain or re-injuring it. It's just real tight for him right now. So once he gets it loosened up, he's good to go. But then at halftime, he's going to have to go through a whole stretching routine with it during half to make sure he can keep it loose. So I would say he's about 90%.
How important is it confidence-wise just to get a conference win? The last 2 years, you haven't been able to get many of those.
Yeah.
Get back on the board.
No, it'd be great. It's huge. I think it's a really big game. Not only that, it's going into an open date. You know, you're going to have the taste of this one in your mouth for 2 weeks. I think it's a conference game. It's on the road. I think it's huge from a confidence standpoint going into the open date to try and continue to build the program and continue to take some strides forward right now.
I know it may sound cliche, but is this one of the biggest games you guys are facing this season?
It is this week. I mean, it is this week right now. Just like I think last week was a big game because of all the implications in the state. Didn't have a lot of the residual effects that we were talking about in the conference, but you know, you go back and Rutgers was a huge game. You know, this one's a huge game. At the end of the day, they're all going to count one, you know, towards a conference race. But I think with where we are losing 3 in a row right now, yeah, for our confidence and some of the things you talked about, yes, that makes this game really big, especially going into an open date.
Skip, how up for grabs is the starting job between Giddens and Forte?
You know, right now, they're both doing some really good things, but neither one is playing as consistently as you'd like to see them play. It's those plays I was talking about earlier where they'll have a sack, they'll have a lost yardage play, they'll have a tackle for a loss, and then they'll give up contain, you know, and they'll give up the edge. It's kind of too hit or miss right now. We need to get more consistently in the system. Where do I fit? What is my job on this play? It's not just snap the ball and run to wherever the ball is. You know, there's 11 guys out there and everybody's got to fit. So right now, I mean, I think Julius has done some good things. Ryan Giddens has done some good things. Right now, I think it's up in the air. Both of them are up in the air. Anything else? Thank you all very much. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Need to get the security.